Very happy to be here. It was 2007 the last time I spoke. That was sort of before the modern mobile era. An enormous amount has changed. This conference is about expanding beyond classified, so that's what I'm going to be talking about. And we heard a little bit about that I can make that sound.
If you try to use the other one, that one, it works.
Okay, thank you. You could have just told me that. All right. Okay, so hopefully this will be interesting as well as entertaining for you. If there are questions during the presentation, please raise your hand. I can take them as I'm going through this. There are a lot of slides. You get the slides. Don't bother to copy anything down. I'm not going to speak to every data point on the slide. So you heard about me. I'm an analyst. I cover mobile, location-based services, social media, a lot of stuff. I've been in and out of the classifieds world over the last 10 years, and I write on these blogs. So this is an overview of what I'm going to talk about today. And hopefully all of this will be consistent with the way your organization is thinking about how the marketplace is evolving. Okay, so this is about the new classifieds marketplace minus the classifieds. So this is something you talked about yesterday. I wasn't there, but I understand this. Classifieds is a term that's really a legacy term that's really dated. It's tied very much to the print world and certain kinds of historical categories in which advertising was placed. But it's really no longer relevant. So this is a transcript of a conversation I had with my 13-year-old daughter, Zoe, and this is almost verbatim. I asked her spontaneously as I was putting this together, what does the word classifieds mean to you? And she said, she's very smart. She said, I don't know, it means to classify things. She literally didn't know what it meant in terms of the newspaper advertising. And then I said, do you know what Craigslist is? And she said, it's kind of like eBay or Amazon. So there she is. And she's part of what you might call the Instagram generation or the Snapchat generation. You just heard that Snapchat was turned down a $4 billion offer from Google and a $3 billion offer from Facebook. Did you hear that yesterday? Okay. Snapchat may not be around in 2 years, and yet they're throwing that kind of money at it because it has such traction with younger people. So you're in the fill-in-the-blank business. Whatever that term is, marketplace, buyers and sellers, whatever it is, changing and removing the words classified from the equation opens up the whole discussion about what's possible, and it also changes the competitive nature of what you're involved with. What are you doing? You're facilitating transactions, bringing buyers and sellers together. I mean, you know all this stuff. Building marketplaces, building distribution, creating simplicity, convenience, efficiency for buyers and sellers. And really what I would recommend is that you focus on markets and market opportunities and solving problems rather than defending a certain kind of territory. So as I said, changing the language, changing the discussion creates a broader sense of opportunity, but you also recognize that you're in a much more competitive world. And it may not have seemed quite the same way when just speaking about classifieds. Horizontal versus vertical strategies, and they're not mutually exclusive. So print is basically a horizontal market, even though there are specialized topic-specific publications. And for the most part, print classifieds were disrupted by horizontal marketplaces, Craigslist, eBay, Google to some degree, and others. AutoTrader is an example of an early vertical player that got in, was very aggressive, and has had great success, largely because of its content, its brand, and its historical first-to-market presence. So 1998 is when they entered. So for how many people is Craigslist a factor in their market? Probably not that many outside the US. Okay, it's still a pretty big deal in the US, but it is now sort of the digital incumbent. And there are a lot of people who believe Craigslist is being disrupted. So that's Craig. And that's a real quote from him, actually, which I admire quite a bit. So this is sort of their scope and footprint, still making huge amounts of money, but problematic. Many people believe that, as I said, they're being disrupted by third parties, which we'll get into in a second. So in 2004, they weren't really on the ComScore top 50 US websites list. In 2007, the last time I spoke, they were number 27. And today they're number 21. So by this standard, they look like they're doing okay. And that's largely because they're free, there's a network effect, and there's this sort of digital incumbency. This is a sort of how many people have seen this slide? A lot of people. It's a semi-famous, often used slide from 2010 from a VC named Andrew Parker. And it shows different sites that are attacking different categories within Craigslist, or different apps, as the case may be. And some of them are not even really around, I think, to the same degree. So this is an old slide, but still the idea is that these specialized sites, these specialized apps, can really go after and provide a better experience than what Craigslist does on a horizontal basis. And that's a visual illustration of what's going on. The monkey representing Craigslist, the planes representing the attackers, the digital sites. So this question of expanding opportunity, expanding beyond classifieds, gets into how do you expand, right? There's this notion of sort of a broad horizontal marketplace or verticals. And in the horizontal context, you really have to have scale, distribution, you have to have lots of content, but in a vertical context, you don't. That's the way that insurgents attack a market, because you can go in and create a better experience with more limited content or more specialized content, a deeper user experience, and gain traction. So how many people are operating verticals or specialized markets? But most people have a broad sort of general classifieds marketplace, I would think. Is that right? That's what I seem to infer from the hands. Okay, so Schibsted, is there anybody from Schibsted in here? No? Strangely. They seem to be the exception, because they've had great success expanding into international, different markets with a broad horizontal strategy. And in France, in particular, is a very interesting case. This is somebody who knows how this happened, can explain it to me later, but they came into the market. It was originally a French company, I guess, largely acquired by Schibsted, or who was an original investor, routed eBay, and they're gone from the market as a result. And this is a broad, very sort of straightforward classified site. Do people know this story? Yeah? So it's kind of an exception that you can come in and offer a broad marketplace and succeed against an incumbent. Okay, so you heard, I'm trying to be mindful of time.
You're good.
Okay. You heard some of the earlier statistics about mobile. I'm not going to belabor those, and you're going to hear some more from Ben Evans a little bit later about mobile and its importance. But this is something you can't ignore. It's not an afterthought. It's something that's got to be primary in your competitive and product development. How many people are doing anything with mobile right now? How many people are satisfied with their mobile offerings? Nobody. One? You are? Oh, okay. Good. Good for you. What is your company?
Okay. A real estate portal in Switzerland.
Okay. Good. All right. Very good. So these are statistics you know well. Lots of people have smartphones across the EU, US, Asia, globally. Trends are the same. Penetration is north of 50%, depending on the market. Depending on the demographic segment, it can be north of 70 or 80%. This is just a sampling of traffic across the globe, mobile versus PC traffic. But in the US and EU, the numbers are relatively low. This is from StatCounter. But if you look at the local space, you find that mobile is a much more significant phenomenon. In the US, at least, sites like Zillow and Yelp and others have traffic from mobiles that are north of 50%. Yelp recently said 59% of their search traffic comes from mobiles. And Zillow said something like 53% of their search queries come from mobiles. So you're seeing very, very heavy use of mobiles, and especially for younger people. So I call them the Instagram generation, the Snapchat generation. You can call them Generation M. These are US data points, probably the same as in Europe. 50%, half of teen smartphone owners use the internet through their phone predominantly, and that's true for younger adults as well, mostly online with mobile. How many people, for whom in this room is this true? Mostly mobile to go on the internet? Probably nobody. You? 1?
85%.
2? 3? 4? Do I hear 4? 5? So for most of us who are older than these age groups, we use mobiles in tandem with other things, but younger people use mobile as primary devices. You already heard how PC sales are declining. PC is not going away. It's just one of several platforms. And of course, you heard about wearables. We don't know what this is going to look like. We don't really know what's going to get traction. How many people have ever had Google Glass on their face? Have you tried it? And could you ever see yourself using it? No, probably not, right? On a regular basis? Well, once they make them look normal, maybe so. But anyway, you're walking down the street, you'll see the house for rent, you see the information. There's that kind of possibility. But this is really premature, but it's something to be aware of. So we don't know how this will play out yet. More data. This is UK data in the automotive category, so it's buying and selling service and parts. The significant thing is that 30% of the audience only used mobile devices to find information on these categories. And then the conversions are very high. Tablet conversions lead to a purchase. 41% of smartphone lookups ultimately lead to a purchase. Not necessarily on the device itself. The point is, we're in a multi-platform world now. You have to think about all these devices. And you have to think about how consumers use one device and then conclude something on another device. So this is Google research that talks about how 90% of US consumers, or 98% actually, of these smartphone, PC, tablet-enabled consumers move between these devices the same day. Are you observing this at all in your own businesses? In your own lives, right? I mean, you see this in your own lives. You may look something up, come back and do research later. And this is one of the great challenges right now of analytics, is to do attribution, to figure out what is influencing purchase behavior. But you have to assume that people will use all these platforms. And so you have to be, the cliche is platform agnostic, or omni-channel is the retailing version of that. So in these new mobile marketplaces, which are competing with you in the same way that the airplanes are trying to kill the monkey, not that your industry is the monkey in that analogy, but should I go back to ringing the bell? Anyway, the way that these new mobile marketplaces are competing with you is that these sites and these apps are primarily entering the market through a mobile. They are often vertical or very specific, like parking apps or niche directories of bars, restaurants, or other things like that. Many PC marketplaces are migrating to mobile. So like Airbnb is seeing an increasing amount of its traffic coming from mobile, and it's becoming more and more mobile oriented. Many sites are now using mobile design to influence PC design, like Kayak, the travel site. Very often, and this was alluded to in the Helsinki discussion just a moment ago, transactions are starting to come into the whole mix, the equation. So a stored payment card, and then creates a lot of loyalty to facilitate a transaction, and then the model is based on taking a percentage of the value of that transaction or processing the credit card. And all of these have in common that they're trying to create less friction, more convenience, more efficiency. Just to give you a couple of examples of this. Uber, Halo, Lyft, and there are many car sharing services around. These are just a few of them. People know these car sharing services? Okay, so they have some of these same things in common. They're two-sided marketplaces. They are enabled by mobile. You couldn't have a business like Uber or Halo without mobiles. They are offering inventory management very often for drivers. And then a lot of these sites are doing something quite similar. And one reason that they're preferred is because the experience is simpler. So this is Halo. Has anybody used Halo? I don't know if they're outside of London. They're in the US and they're also in London. It's a cab. There are probably equivalent versions in different European countries. You call a cab this way that tells you how long it's going to take to show up. It's the promise to the driver is more jobs, processing of credit cards, and then the drivers get convenience, certainty about whether or not the cab is going to come. It's more efficient, and so on. This is a Lyft, which is using private individuals as drivers. And the pitch, interestingly, to the individuals is that you're making income. It's a job. You're going to make some additional income, 35 US or 26 euros per hour. And it's social. That's the other thing that's interesting. They pitch it explicitly as a social experience for both drivers and riders. And the drivers become passengers, the passengers become drivers. Local services. So these are some US-based, not exclusively sites. My Time is a scheduling app for local services. They process credit cards. Square, which is a payment processor, is now a directory for local businesses that accept payments. So this is a way in which these entities that start out in one area can move to another and encroach upon your markets. Local services is not something that everybody in this room is doing, but it's a natural extension, and many people do it. PayPal, same as Square, they've become a directory of local businesses. They also offer deals and discounts, so they're trying to be a holistic promotional vehicle as well as a payment processor. TopTable, going to be doing payments. They're an open table experimenting with that, and Yelp has introduced scheduling and e-commerce services. So there's this migration. They started in one place and they're moving to another place, often with transactions at the center. All of these sites will be taking mobile payments and doing transactions. So it becomes this kind of very sticky marketplace. Classifieds, obviously many of you are doing mobile. These are just eBay-centric examples. Now, one of the things that's interesting about mobile is you get additional capabilities that you can't get on the PC. That's all right. You get additional capabilities that you can't get on the PC. So there was a home improvement app called Red Beacon in the United States bought by Home Depot, and their mobile app was actually a lot better than their PC experience because you could upload photographs, take video, and send them to service providers who could then see that and respond to you through the app. So there's ways in which the intrinsic functionality of the phone, the location awareness, the camera, et cetera, can create new opportunities and can make mobile the preferred platform either for buyers or sellers. Tablets, how many people have a dedicated tablet experience? Couple. So this is Marketplace. Tablets, as you heard, are going to outsell PCs. Many companies just treat the tablet as a PC equivalent. Google certainly does that. They treat tablets and PCs the same, and what we see is that behavior is similar on tablets and PCs. It's not identical. You have higher response rates to ads on tablets, just as you do on smartphones. But tablet engagement is very high, as you heard. The thing about tablets that's different, however, is their size variation. So you have the iPad, which is, who has an iPad? Who has something else, a smaller 7-inch tablet, like a Google Nexus or a Kindle? Right, so the smaller tablets are in between a PC, or in between the smartphone and the larger screen. So that's an issue in terms of web design and layout, which suggests responsive design, if you know what that is. So this is a small tablet version for Airbnb. Looks very nice. They've done a nice job. I believe this is dedicated to the 7-inch tablet. I don't think this is what that looks like on the smartphone. And then they have reviews down here, which is part of a reputation trust system that's part of the whole sort of social media marketplace. So they've done a nice job of formatting this for the 7-inch tablet. This could be a responsively designed site. And as I said, more and more of their traffic is coming through mobile. So into this sort of social marketplaces world, social markets offer more trust, and then for the seller they offer, or the publisher, they offer virality, which isn't really a word, but you know what it means. So social marketplaces have arisen in part, so you don't think this is funny, this is from Psycho, right? Arisen in part to address the Craigslist problem of psychopaths, criminals, and murderers in these anonymous marketplaces. So that fell really flat. I guess it's really too dark and sinister to be amusing. But this, as you know, Craigslist has had a lot of problems with these things. And so there's this notion that in a social marketplace you have connections with people, or vicarious connections with people. There's some sort of affinity, there's some sort of known element there. So these are the categories, really. I created this sort of list. You have integrated social features where you put different buttons and things to enable frictionless sharing on existing pages, or you have marketplaces that are built around certain kinds of things like identity, some geographic affiliation, school, religious, other kinds of affiliations. And then within existing marketplaces, you have these trust systems or reputation systems, and Facebook and eBay and Airbnb to some degree. Well, Facebook is really part of this sort of straddles both of these categories. But the idea is you integrate social features, you have a marketplace that's built around some sort of existing affinity, or you have these reputation systems that are included. Collaborative consumption, peer-to-peer marketplaces, these folks are all encroaching. Eventually, when they develop business models, some of them will be classifieds. People are obviously aware of peer-to-peer and collaborative consumption scenarios. So who's heard of Nextdoor? Has anybody heard of Nextdoor? A few people? Nextdoor is a US-based social network that just raised 60 million US from venture capitalists. They are in 24,000 neighborhoods in the US. They've been around for just a little under two years, maybe 3 years, and they've raised about 100 million total in the last 18 months. They're expanding into English-speaking markets, but they have global ambitions. And they have no business model. There's no monetization right now. They're just trying to get penetration. It's like a private Facebook built around geography. And what they ultimately think that they're going to do is become an alternative to Yellow Pages and classifieds. Not all classifieds categories, but 15% of the postings on their site are for classifieds, private party stuff, and also requests for recommendations for service providers. So these kinds of companies are definitely moving into your space. And the promise here is you know your neighbors, there's trust. This is a much more trusted environment and more efficient in some respects because you can post something and get a response quickly. In their most engaged neighborhoods, they say they have 100 postings a day. Not for classifieds, but just back and forth. JobVite, this is this is a recruiting website, but what's interesting here is they're trying to use technology to help companies find employees using social media. So part of this recruiting for the social web is marketing, but part of it is also technology. This is a site that was mentioned at one of your previous events. It's I used it because it was mentioned. I think in what was the last last event? Okay. Yeah, so I think that's where this came up. But anyway, so this is a larger national Canadian company which breaks down its directories by city, and here's an example of a geographic identification. People don't necessarily know the people on this site, but there's this sort of greater affinity. It's a marketing notion. And what they're doing also is trying to leverage sites like Pinterest. Is anybody using Pinterest? Okay, they're trying to leverage Pinterest and piggyback on top of it to get more exposure, more distribution, and people should be doing that with other sites. Facebook, a lot of people getting traffic from Facebook. Yeah, Facebook, Craigslist, YouTube, SEO, all these tactics as a way to drive additional exposure for your sites. So Kijiji on Facebook. Pinterest is another one. that could become a classifieds marketplace. It's probably not going to be, because they have promoted pins. They sort of have sort of entered the market in terms of their monetization strategy. It's a pay for exposure strategy, but what's happening is you've got auto dealers and others who are already selling things on Pinterest. So these are used cars for sale with video on Pinterest, and there's this is a U.S. Washington State Honda dealer that's promoting its cars. So are people seeing this kind of thing happen? How many people use Pinterest? Just a few. Okay, so, and Tumblr, Tumblr acquired by Yahoo, same kind of thing. These are all marketplaces, essentially, where people can expose things for sale and find things for sale. Now, whether or not the company is making money explicitly building promotion around these opportunities is a different question. Digit, this is Tish Hill's site from Victoria in Canada. Do you know this site at all? It's a startup. It's very Pinterest influenced. You can see the visual design, very Pinterest influenced. And on their product pages, they've got all this social media integrated. So this is an example of a site that is trying to leverage every conceivable social channel for further exposure. Now, Facebook. How am I doing on time now? Okay, well, that doesn't tell me how much time I have left. Okay. 15 minutes left. All right. So Facebook has failed in the classifieds business. Now that's a strange thing, because Facebook is a natural business model, that's a natural thing for Facebook to do, and they have tried a couple of times to get into classifieds. They have a classifieds marketplace, although it's not well used. It doesn't make any sense that they failed, because they have trust, they've got a huge market, they've got a huge critical mass of users in virtually every market. They are the antidote to Craigslist, and people have heard Craig Donato from Oodle in the past. Oodle was bought by somebody else, and I think Craig isn't there anymore. He may be, but Oodle came in. So Facebook tried its own classifieds platform in 2007, and Oodle came in 2009 to be the sort of classifieds market for Facebook. And at the time, Craig was saying, this is the sort of Craigslist 2.0, where trust is the mediating element here, and we're going to do a much better job than Craigslist, and it essentially failed. Now, why? Because the user experience was basically suboptimal. The culture of Facebook wasn't aligned with selling. There was really insufficient attention paid by Facebook and commitment to making the user experience great. And they had content, but it was not, it was limited, really. So I'm coming to the end. All right. So what does the new marketplace look like? In many of these cases, it's mobile-centric, but multi-platform. Social features are definitely integrated throughout. It may be the dominant or defining characteristic. They typically enter with a vertical or focus on a vertical and then can expand. There's transactions at the center. So very often there's a stored credit card and a transaction that's happening. That's one of the characteristic elements of some of these new marketplaces. And they're very self-consciously trying to create or bring greater efficiency, create new markets, disrupt existing markets. That's very much the attitude of these entrepreneurs. There's an inefficient market, we're going to go in and create something better, remove friction, etc. And the business models really are pretty traditional and straightforward. Either there's an advertising sort of visibility or placement model, or, as I said, transactions are increasingly a part of this. Final slide. So if you want to reach me or talk to me or ask me questions about this after the event is over, or if you want to receive a copy of the slides directly rather than waiting, I'm happy to send them to you.